Good afternoon, STEAM Schoolers. Welcome to our last show before the Easter break. I am absolutely delighted and really looking forward to finding more out about the Chester Sustainable Palm Oil Project. Really interested to hear from Faye. Welcome to our show.
Hello.
Hello, Faye. You work at Chester Zoo, don't you?
I do indeed, yes. I'm the Sustainable Palm Oil City Project Officer. Bit of a mouthful at Chester Zoo.
It is a little bit of a mouthful, but such an important project. And I know lots of our schools and students and families watching the show today are really excited to hear more. So shall we get started with your questions?
Definitely.
Okay, first of all, so tell us a little bit more about your role at Chester Zoo.
Yes, so I focus on the City Project. So we made Chester the first sustainable palm oil city in the world. So I've worked with lots of different businesses in the city, for example, the restaurants, to go through their food supply chain. So all the food which they have in their restaurant and where there's palm oil, which there most likely is, make sure it comes from a sustainable source. So we have a look through. If it's unsustainable, then swap it to something which is sustainable.
Okay, wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about the project and, what's the aim of the overall project?
Yeah, so when we had a look at what we could do with the palm oil industry and how we could sort of improve standards for sustainable palm oil, the overall target for the campaign was to increase the demand for sustainable palm oil in the UK market. So to make people aware of it and to make businesses asking for it. So we decided to go for a city project so that then, the city really feels that together the city is making a difference. So restaurants which might otherwise be competitors are working together to really achieve something and something we can celebrate together as a business, as a city.
Wonderful. Okay, so tell us a bit more about palm oil, what it is, why manufacturers love to use it, and what are some of the issues around the use of that product?
Yeah, so palm oil comes from a fruit on an oil palm tree. It's semi-solid at room temperature, so it has a very high melting point. So this means that it's a really versatile product. You'll find it in foods, but also cosmetics like makeup. You'll find it in solid foods, but also in liquids. So it's a really efficient oil because it has so many different uses. So from one sort of oil, you can do so many different things. It's very cheap oil to produce, which is why manufacturers really like it. From a very small piece of land, you can get a lot of oil, which is why you'll find it in around 50% of products in a supermarket. So it's in really a lot of different things. As I say, it's a very sort of cheap product to produce, but also it prolongs shelf life. So for example, with a loaf of bread, if you put palm oil in it, it will last longer. So that means in a supermarket, that's great because they have longer to make sure that they sell that loaf of bread so that, it doesn't get out of date and we don't want food waste. So it's a really positive thing.
Wonderful. And where is palm oil typically grown?
So the tree originates from West Africa, but you will find around 85% of the palm oil which is grown, so it's grown in an oil palm tree, in Indonesia and Malaysia. So we've got a project out in Borneo, which is why we sort of noticed the devastation that unsustainable palm oil was causing.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about that then. How does the production of palm oil affect rainforests and animals living nearby?
Absolutely. So the number one which we focus on is deforestation. So massive areas of land and rainforest, which have thousands of animals living in it, are being destroyed to build oil palm plantations. So that's our sort of number one, is that deforestation has to stop. It's also a really quick way of clearing and cheap way of clearing the land is to set it on fire, which these fires obviously get out of control and they kill a lot of animals. They're really distressful for all the local wildlife. So the burning of the land is a really big problem. And human wildlife conflict, when you're sort of pushing animals to smaller areas, they're going to be closer to humans. So that can be quite a big problem in the unsustainable palm oil industry.
And are there any animals that are affected in particular by palm oil production?
Yeah, so the sort of number one animal everyone thinks about is orangutans. So we've got the Bornean and Sumatran orangutans at the zoo. We also work with a project in Borneo to do with both those species. But it's not just those; it's things like sun bears, hornbills, you've got tigers, Sumatran tigers, rhinos, elephants. There's so many species which are affected by the unsustainable palm oil industry.
Wonderful. And what also about the humans that live nearby to palm oil production? How are they affected?
Yeah, so air pollution, so the forest fires which I mentioned, which were going on really devastatingly years back. Air pollution was a massive problem for the local people because, massive fires produce a massive amount of smoke. Working conditions, so there aren't laws, so you've got child labour, you've got, working really long hours. So really that in that industry needed to improve a lot. And land grabbing, so you found that a lot of big companies went in and took land from local communities, which was not there. They did not have the right to do. So that was really sort of stressful, and why we want to push for more positive things. It's a great thing, palm oil, for countries like Indonesia. A small farmer can get a lot of money from a small piece of land if they have an oil palm plantation. So it's not a bad thing, but it's making sure that there are rules in place which stop the land being burned. You can't destroy really great rainforest, and there needs to be improved working conditions.
Fabulous. Okay, so are there any alternatives to palm oil that's kind of produced in an unsustainable way?
Yeah, so there are no alternatives which are as good as palm oil, which what you can see around, people say ban palm oil. You will have to replace it with something else, a different oil. So if you used coconut oil instead, that's a very common oil which we sort of know about. You need twice as much land to make the same amount of oil. Maize is another crop, so you need 30 times as much land to produce the same amount of oil. So actually, if we were to all stop using palm oil and use something else, you would cause further destruction instead of sort of saving the wildlife. You're potentially causing worse destruction elsewhere. So that's why we want to sort of demand sustainable palm oil. Palm oil is not bad, but we want people to use sustainable palm oil.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about that then. How can palm oil producers be more sustainable, helping to kind of, protect animals and local habitats?
So we support the RSPO. So they are the company which says whether you are sustainable or unsustainable. So we ask that farmers and companies and businesses use the RSPO certificates. If you follow their guidelines, that includes no deforestation, and things like wildlife corridors. So if you've got a massive oil palm plantation with lots of lines of trees, a part of it will include a corridor which wildlife can move through, so that when you've got different areas of rainforest, we want to make sure they're still joined together so that animals can move around the different areas and you've still got biodiversity. So that's really important, that they follow these guidelines. It includes no forest fires, permission from local communities, and the working conditions which I mentioned earlier. So we want to encourage and really celebrate the RSPO and get companies and get farmers using that accreditation.
So as a consumer who's perhaps going to the local supermarket to buy some groceries and household items, how will we know if the products on the shelves have used sustainable palm oil?
Yeah, that is quite a tricky one, which we've been trying to work really hard on, because in the food industry, they do now have to put palm oil in the packaging. In the cosmetics and cleaning products, they don't have to write palm oil. It can still be called some other names. So that industry is hard. But with the food industry, you do know if it's in your food, but they don't have to write sustainable. So on our Act for Wildlife website, we have a sustainable palm oil shopping list. So we encourage people to have a read through that, see if the bread you're buying might be unsustainable. Why not swap to one of the brands on there, like Hovis or Warburton's, and make those changes. And if we all make one or two changes to the products which we use, you are helping to increase the demand for sustainable palm oil.
Fabulous. That's really, it's good information for all young people watching this show. Yeah. So in terms of the sustainable palm oil movement, I imagine it's been going for a number of years now. What percentage, do you know what percentage of products have sustainable palm oil in compared to unsustainable palm oil?
We have the percentages of how much is coming into the country.
Okay.
Products wise, we know it's in 50% of goods, and it is really moving forward. So in the UK, the amount of palm oil, raw palm oil, which is imported into the country, 75% is sustainable. So it's really great. We're making some really, really great changes towards demanding sustainable. And we, as the UK, have entered into an agreement with 8 different countries, whereby we say by 2020, everything, 100% will be completely sustainable. And we're making some really, really great changes. Globally, in the whole world, 21% of palm oil is sustainable. So really, we are if we push it in Europe, that will make a big difference to that percentage and have a knock-on effect.
Wow, it seems like we're way ahead of the game here in the UK, which is wonderful to hear.
Yeah, and Europe as a whole, there are other countries which are doing slightly better. There are countries which are doing slightly worse out of the 8, but definitely the UK is making some really positive changes, and we just need to keep the momentum going and keep celebrating the companies which are doing it and investing in sustainable palm oil, and celebrate them and say thank you and support them.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned some big brands a little earlier on. Which manufacturers and retailers in the UK are really leading the way in their use of sustainable palm oil? Because we want to go all support them, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, we've got our shopping list. So on our shopping list has lots of different brands on there, which you'll see. But just to name a couple, like I mentioned, Hovis and Warburton's, Nestle, Mars, Mr. Kipling, Aldi. All of Aldi's own brands are completely sustainable. And so there are some, really big companies out there which have taken so much time. It's cost them a lot of money to make sure that they're sustainable. And yeah, there's a full list which breaks down, cakes, bread, biscuits, chocolates. When you're going out, is the chocolate you're buying unsustainable? Double check on our shopping list and go through your cupboards and see what's got palm oil in. You'll probably be very surprised about what some of the things that you're buying have palm oil in and you didn't even realise. Have a look through your cupboards and have a look at our shopping list and compare notes.
Brilliant. It's good to know how you can personally have a positive impact with the choices that you make in terms of the biscuits and bread and everything that you buy. Okay, so thank you for giving us a really good overview of what the issues around palm oil production are. I'd love to hear a little bit more in detail about your project. So, who initiated the Sustainable Palm Oil City project in Chester?
We did. Yeah, we did at Chester Zoo. Yeah, so it's something which was first brought to the table around 7 years ago by my colleague Kat, who works with our field projects out in Borneo. So something she's really passionate about because she could see the destruction to the rainforest which was happening, and it's a really big concern for species that we work really closely with. And so first and foremost, we had to make sure here at the zoo that we're completely sustainable with all our food products. So first of all, we went away, made sure we were sustainable. We made sure it's the right thing to do. We can't tell people to use sustainable palm oil unless we know that is definitely the right thing to do. So we spent a good few years talking to other orangutan charities, who make sure that from their point of view, they agree with us as a charity that is the right route to go down, make sure we were sustainable. And then it was in September 2017 when we said, right, we're launching the City Project, we're getting hotels, restaurants, workplaces, tourist attractions on board, we're getting everyone talking about it and celebrating it. And we were really excited that in March we could announce that we were the first sustainable palm oil city in the world.
That is an amazing achievement, isn't it? An example really for other cities in the UK and beyond to follow.
Definitely, and that's what we're really hoping for. We've got other cities which are wanting to launch and get involved, which we're really excited about, and we want to make sure we keep that momentum going and have cities, not just in the UK, but all over the world, who want to use our framework and our toolkits and become a sustainable palm oil city themselves.
Fabulous. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about the main activities of the project.
Yeah, definitely. So we don't just focus on businesses. We've also gone out to a lot of schools. So we have a Safari Ranger team which go out into schools. And like I say, they get school children to encourage to go home, have a look through their cupboards, tell their parents about it, tell their friends, families. A really key part of the campaign is spreading the word, and making sure you educate people, because it was something which people really hadn't heard of until relatively recently. So we have the City Project, which works with businesses in the city. We work with schools on site at the zoo. We have volunteers and we have Safari Rangers, which are going out and talking to everyone, all our visitors, and making sure that the people understand the right message.
Fabulous. And you mentioned that you work with partners and businesses in Chester. What does that look like? How do you all work together?
Yeah, and so we've got a couple of different communities. So we've got a Facebook group which people can post on. So we really wanted restaurants, especially, to work together. And so if they're checking a product, rather than asking us, they can put it on their community and say, oh, hey, does anybody use this? Do you know if it's sustainable? And work together in that way, and really feel like they're sort of taking onus on it, which is great. A lot of the workplaces which we have on board as champions speak to the restaurants they go to, and we want restaurants to speak to other restaurants and say, hey, have you heard of this campaign? Let's all get involved. And we really felt that in Chester we did see that sort of support, which was amazing. And I think together they feel really proud of what they've achieved. And using networks is so important with campaigns like this, that you speak to one business, but actually they know a lot of different businesses, and if you get somebody who's really passionate in that business, they will go out there and help spread the word on your behalf, which is amazing.
Brilliant. And I'm guessing your biggest achievement to date has been securing that sustainable palm oil city status back in March, but what else has the project achieved?
Yeah, so we have over 50 businesses in Chester which use sustainable palm oil and are going through their supply chain. One of the businesses we're really proud of is Essential. So they supply a lot of the council schools in the area and do around 5.5 million school meals a year. So we're really, really proud that they are completely going through, which is a massive, massive job in itself, to go through all of their supply chain and make sure that all the palm oil that they use is sustainable. So we're really, really proud of the work that they're doing, and we're proud of all of our champions to sort of put the time and effort into checking it. It is, it's a big job to do, but we've had such a positive reaction, which we're just really proud of.
Wonderful. Congratulations. What an amazing project. Okay, so you mentioned Borneo a little earlier on. How are you connected to kind of international projects? How do you support each other? How does it all work together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have projects all over the whole world. As a zoo, we are a charity, and our main mission is preventing extinction. So everything we do at the zoo, every decision we make, ultimately leads to preventing extinction. So we have a conservation team, which each one is responsible for a different area and different projects across the whole world. And we focus on doing fundraising for these projects, and we have different specialisms which we will focus on. Out in Borneo, we do various different projects there depending on what the needs are. In every single project which we have, we work with charities which are local to that area, so we know that we're doing the right thing. You know, we're sat here in England, we need to have contacts on the ground in that area who sort of are telling us what the best thing, how we can best support them. So a couple of examples is our orangutan rope bridges. So as I mentioned, a really big issue is having little areas of rainforest which aren't joined together. So we do rope bridges, which we test out here at the zoo, which is, you know, if you come to the zoo, you'll see lots of ropes in the orangutan enclosure. We watch how they use them. And then out in Borneo, we'll recreate these over rivers, which perhaps the orangutans can't get across, to try and reconnect the forest for them. And we work in a lot of schools, so out there we really try to make the locals engaged, so they feel really passionately about their local wildlife, so they want to make sure that they protect it. You know, we love orangutans, but you know, out there we want them to love them as much as we do, so that then they want to preserve their homes.
Oh, this is fantastic to hear that, you know, the wider impact of what you're doing. Okay, so I can imagine there are lots of young people watching this, their parents and their teachers, and thinking, right, I want to get involved. I want to support your project. How can we help? How can we help if we're lucky enough to live nearby Chester, but actually, you know, we've got schools and families watching all over the UK and beyond? What can they do to support your project?
Yeah, spreading the word is so vital. You know, demand sustainable. Tell people, go to your friends and your family and say, you know, sustainable palm oil is great. It's the right option. But let's all go in our cupboards. Let's, you know, I hope that after this, some of you will go and have a look through your cupboards and see, you know, what palm oil's in, and download our shopping list on our Act for Wildlife website and see what projects you've got which are unsustainable, what is sustainable, and that in itself is great. And also when you go to restaurants, when you go and when you're out and about, why not ask the question, you know, write to brands, speak to brands and say, do you use sustainable palm oil? Because as a brand, if people keep asking, it's something that they will eventually have to take on board if they don't already. So if we're asking them, you know, if you go into a restaurant, oh, do you know about palm oil? Do you use sustainable palm oil? And tell them about our campaign. You know, we want businesses getting in touch with us, and if they don't know how to approach it, tell them to get in touch, and we can really support them. We want other cities, so, you know, if you know people who are really passionate in a city about it, get in touch and get signed up to it and do it as your city and sort of lead the way.
That's amazing. So you are the first point of call, really, aren't you? If there is a school or a community watching this show today that think, right, okay, I am going to lead the campaign in my local area. We're going to become a sustainable palm oil city or town. They need to get in touch with you, don't they? That's you.
Absolutely. We would love for people to get in touch with us, and absolutely welcome that. Yeah, I'm happy to support you.
Brilliant. Okay, so on that subject, just to get you ready, we do have our micro challenge. We have one every week, and this week our students are being tasked to write a letter to their local supermarket. They've got to do some research about which products that they could stock in their local supermarket, but also give some suggestions to the supermarket manager about how they could display and promote sustainable palm oil products in their stores. Have you got any suggestions for our viewers who are ready to complete that challenge?
Go on our website, on our Act for Wildlife website. There is so much information. You know, if you want to go armed with facts, there's loads of information on our website which you can point people towards, and you know, get really clued up yourselves and sort of passionate about that. And there's some great things on there, so I'd really recommend having a look on there and getting clued up.
Brilliant, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show. It's been an absolute honour to hear all about the amazing work you are doing. I expected to feel inspired to talking about sustainable palm oil, but the stuff about the work you're doing in Borneo was absolutely heartwarming to hear.
Thank you very much.
Oh no, thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.